I didn't know that we'd be promoting the couples retreat when I chose those readings. A lot to think about. Just a few pages into the Bible comes this familiar story of Adam, Eve, and the serpent. Much has been made of this story. If you grew up in the church, you've heard this a million times. The ancients said they had fallen, and so goes all humanity. The traditionalists said Adam and Eve fell from innocence to the guilt, to be in guilt in God's eyes. Many have thought over these claims through theology and psychology and mythology. Freud must have worried over that snake for a long time. Male chauvinists blamed Eve for tempting the upstanding Adam, and the feminists protecting Eve protecting Eve said she did it as an act of inquisitiveness and blamed Adam for blaming Eve, and so on and so on. Whatever the truth of the matter, this myth, this story of epic proportions is like a Rorschach and asks us to see something of ourselves in it, calls us to the table over and over again throughout human history. This story in Lent, this time of reflection in church, a time before Easter, a time to reflect on temptation, demands another look. The Eden story basics. It never happened. It came from Babylonian legend, which was created long before the Bible ever existed. God tells Adam in this version, tells Adam and Eve that they can do just about anything in the garden but eat from the tree of wisdom. If they do that, they will die, which is a serious lie that God was never put on trial for, but should have been. The mysterious tree beckons. Eve finds herself inching toward it day by day. Don't touch the tree. Nagging in the soul about being not to go over there. Anyone who has been around children knows that if you tell them, do not go close to the edge, they most certainly will. So Eve gets a whisper in the ear from the serpent. In fact, some depictions of the scene have the snake's forked tongue in Eve's ear, an erotic play on the whole story that I like very much. The snake says, "Go for it." She eats the apple and she gives it to Adam, who happily follows. The happy-go-lucky couple gain not only wisdom, but self-awareness, a self-consciousness. Sure, they gain shame, which is part of knowing oneself. They also gain a flood of emotions, perhaps the first flood story in the Bible. Jewish teachers of old used to tell the story to defend sexual practices such as monogamy and the abhorrence of public nakedness. Christians use the story to make a moral point about divorce and sexuality. Early Christians used the story to point to God and point away from the Roman gods. The Gnostic Christians told the story from the serpent's point of view, giving him the qualities not of evil, but saying that he embodied the quality of Christ. The history says a story like this has captured the human attention for thousands of years and has a lasting value as a myth. The kind of myth that comes out of real experience. How many can stand up and say they never had their hand in the cookie jar when mom had told them, don't take any cookies? The sound of mom in the ear. The myth, like all good stories, asks us to reflect and respond on something common and important. The story is about temptation. And it is also the story of the innocence of our ancestors. Now, if this were a true story, true in the historical sense, one thing to say about our ancestors is that they blindly followed a talking snake's direction. Who does that? The conservatives have said that this is the first presence of evil in paradise, giving the serpent a bad rap. This evil ascribed not only to the snake, but to Eve's will and Adam's idiocy, which compounds the sin. I think this is where they get all that nonsense about a woman must follow a man. But what is really going on here? The human story told for what purpose? This is not a holy story told to instruct humans. It's a human story told to point to a holy question. The church has said that this story explains our sinful nature, to which Unitarians rejoin, it is not our nature, but our choice. The church said the disobeying of God is how we lost paradise, to which Unitarians have said that paradise is yet still available. The traditional church says the sin of the apple and the expulsion from Eden set up the correction we needed by divine sacrifice, to which Unitarians say the correction is ours to make every day, not once and for all in a moment of time that happened 2,000 years ago. To accept the traditional interpretation is to accept the apple of a story. And I think to miss the cover-up in Eden. I hope that title got you here today. I thought a long time about that title. The truth is that we did not begin life as models of virtue, nor have we begun life as sinners beyond repair. We evolved. We invented ethics. We invented ways of being over the course of human history. Our gods were formed in our image, while God itself pulled us toward the highest good we could achieve. To continue to reinterpret this story as a God that had it out for us is to miss the evolutionary link that we do strive to be the best we can for each other. We do work for freedom and justice, for compassion and love, despite the occasional wolf of Wall Street or Russian despot that proves otherwise. And I see this all the time. We, the members of this congregation, working for these things. And I also see temptation to do otherwise. I see those who are tempted to put their hand in the cookie jar. They come to me with dilemmas and addictions and want to be blessed and renewed. This is as it should be. And I think the mere fact that any one of us can identify our temptations and wrestle with them is evidence of a God that desires of us wisdom, not innocence. A God that desires of us the knowledge of the difference of good and evil. Not a God that desires of us to be blind to the realities of life. Set aside the real fact that the Eden story is one of patriarchal religion attempting to squash the feminine by pinning her with the evil of all humanity, which is all true, and many books have been written about that. Good books by people like Elaine Pagels. The story is a cover-up in and of itself. It was pointing not to our sin, but to our awareness. the awareness that we act on every day. That is the spiritual dilemma of deciding what is right and wrong. The challenge that we have to confront the present and the future and the decisions we make. It is a good sign that we wrestle with temptation, because it means that deep down we want to do right. It is only the psychopath who can't see the difference between right and wrong. It is only one who cares only for himself who does not see the difference between right and wrong, and is, in a way, more like the innocent couple, only in the opposite, blinded by desire. Here's another related thing. At the foundation of temptation is our orientation to time. Let me explain. Philip Zimbardo, a psychologist, has written about this. He talks about how we orient our lives. He says that each of us have an orientation to the past, the present, or the future. He wrote a book called The Time Paradox. I recommend it. How to make everyday decisions that keep you either unhealthily tied to the past or over-focused on the present gratifications you receive, or freed by the future orientation. He says that if we resist temptation, the pull of the past or the rewards of the present, if we resist the temptation to refer back or to believe that the present is the only thing here, and we have a future orientation, that means we make decisions that don't just make us feel good for now, but orient our lives for the next steps and the world's life. We become happier, we become more in control and more aware of our consequences and our actions. He says present-oriented people are fun, they're sensual, they're good time people, but they don't make good planners. Present orientation in a hedonistic way is unhealthy. Now, there is some present orientation in a healthy way. We savor the world we live in, and in turn we care for it and become future oriented because we want others to have what we have. If we're over-focused on the present, we walk around and a snake hands us an apple and we say, sure, why not? If we can resist temptation, Zimbardo says, we become more conscientious. We make better life decisions, healthier ones, and we are more likely, he says, to live 2 years longer than those who aren't. Because we make choices that are positive health behaviors, future-oriented. We can resist temptation. It doesn't take much to see that our present-day society is present-oriented and hedonistic. Take the apple, yes, please, at every turn of our day. A child drops out of school every 9 seconds in the U.S. Why? Tempted to live another life. Abstinence pledges. Teenagers who make the pledge to be abstinent until they are married. 60% of teenage girls who make these pledges have sex before they're married, and most of them unprotected. So much for pledges. All this says the Adam and Eve story is confusing. But one point is it zeroes in on temptation. How are you tempted? There's a space on the back of your order of service that is blank. I encourage you today, now or later, to write down what your temptations are. Now, I just got back from spring break. We drove 12 hours to Taos. We skied down big mountains. I was tempted at every turn. tempted to go down slopes I couldn't ski, even though I've been skiing since I was 2 years old. Tempted to leave my children at the gas station somewhere between. And so on. You will not go more than an hour leaving this worship when you will be tempted by something. What are your temptations? I encourage you to write them down. I encourage you to list them, to see what response you can make to them. Someone asked me why I practice Lent by giving up something each year. This year, sugar in all its overt forms. It's because I can see the temptation. I can see it more clearly, and I can confront it. And in a way, practice becoming more conscientious about the choice I make, about what I am doing and when. In short, a fast or a Lenten practice pushes me into a future orientation. Easter Day will be a sweet day for me. Challenging my present hedonistic response, of which there are many. So what does your temptation list tell you? Spend some time today or this week with that list and ask, what does it tell you about yourself? What does it tell you about what you're struggling with? The Adam and Eve story is an important human story, which shows us how far we have come, how human evolution has moved us past the need to pin our problems on God or create good and evil scenarios that explain why we are tempted, and has moved us to confront the temptations that charge us each day. Perhaps the kind of paradise where we were unaware of ourselves, where shame played no role in who we were, where all was easy and all given to us, is a place we desire once in a while. Certainly I do. But it is always a human fantasy. Life is about knowing the differences that occur between us. It's about celebrating our faults and our talents. It's about being challenged by the experiences that come to us and striving for the good of us all. To me, that is the God of the garden, the one who says, go ahead. Eat the apple, it's good for you. And then strive forward to paradise, a paradise of awareness, a paradise of knowing the difference between the present and the future decisions you make. My brother told me once a story. He lived in Italy. He was standing in the Sistine Chapel looking up at the beautiful paintings of Michelangelo, and he stood under the Adam and Eve scene. If you look on my Facebook page, I posted that. It's the scene of Eve sitting under the tree, the snake wrapped, and Adam standing, reaching. And then the other side of it is the angel casting them out of the garden. My brother stood under this scene in the Sistine Chapel, and a man who could not see was standing next to him, his hand on a friend and one hand on a cane. The friend of the blind man described the painting. The blind man responded to his friend, "Do they look scared?" My response to that story is, I believe we have made them scared. We have overlaid our fears onto this story for too long. It is time to challenge the cover-up and see this story as one that points to freedom, to independence, to wisdom, and ultimately the challenge to seek out the God of many names that calls us to our best selves. this God, like the God of the Sufi poet Hafiz, who says the beloved sometimes wants us to do a great favor, holds us upside down and shakes all the nonsense out. This God wants us to confront the temptations of our lives, wants us to confront these temptations each day and grow closer to the divine in doing so. Good luck with your list. I hope it serves you well.